Today we have moved on to chapter number 5 of Microeconomics. This is an interesting chapter. So this topic is all about price elasticity of demand. So elasticity comes from the word elastic. So what is all about price elasticity of demand? We shall see in detail. So in the preceding chapter, we have discussed what is the law of demand. So we have discussed that under the law of demand, when the price of good falls, its quantity demanded rises. And when price rises, its quantity demanded falls. So this inverse relationship between price of a commodity and its quantity demanded is the law of demand, and that we have discussed. But this law of demand, it indicates only direction of change in quantity demanded, in response to the change in price. And this law of demand does not tell us by how much or to what extent quantity demanded of a good will change when there is a change in the price or in response to the change in its price. So it is just giving you the direction of change, but not the amount of quantity demanded change. It does not indicate the change in the quantity demanded or amount of quantity demanded in response to the change in price. And so we will be discussing that factor in the concept of price elasticity of demand. The information as to how much or to what extent the quantity demanded of a good will change because of the result of change in its price. It will be provided by the concept of this price elasticity of demand. So let's go to the meaning or the concept. So it is given here. Concept of price elasticity of demand. So this price elasticity of demand refers to the degree of responsiveness. So here we are talking about degree. That means quantity, not just the direction. So it refers to the degree of responsiveness of quantity demanded of a good to what? To a change in its price. So the degree of responsiveness of quantity demanded of a good when there is a change in the price of a commodity, and other factors such as income, taste and preference of the consumers, price of related commodities that can determine the demand are held constant. So that is the concept of price elasticity of demand. So in short, we can say that price elasticity of demand can be defined as the ratio of percentage change in quantity demanded to a given percentage change in price. Thus, in the formula we can give price elasticity equals to percentage change in quantity demanded divided by the percentage change in price. So that is all about price elasticity of demand. It is the degree of responsiveness of how much quantity of consumer will be demanded of a commodity when there is a change in price. So we are talking about quantity here, not just the direction when it comes to price elasticity of demand. So under this elasticity, there are mainly three types of elasticity. That is elastic demand, inelastic demand, and then unitary elastic demand. So let us first see what is elastic demand. So when percentage change in quantity demanded of a commodity is greater. So change in quantity demanded is greater than the change in price, percentage change in price. Then the price elasticity of demand will be greater than 1. And in this case, we call it, we call this situation as demand is elastic. So percentage change in quantity demanded is much higher or greater than the percentage change in price. And then in that case, price elasticity of demand will be equal to 1. And in this case, demand is said to be elastic. So EP is greater than 1. What about inelastic demand? So opposite to elastic demand, when a given percentage change in price of a commodity, leads to small change in quantity demanded. So change in price leading to a small change in quantity demanded. In this case, price elasticity will be less than 1. And in that case, demand is said to be inelastic. So elasticity of demand is less than 1. So change in price occurs, but because of this change in price, the quantity demanded is not affected much. So very less amount of good is demanded. So even though there is change in price, quantity demanded is very less. So in that case, it is said that price elasticity is inelastic, or demand in this case is inelastic, because price elasticity will be less than 1. So what is the last one? Unitary elastic demand. So when the percentage change in quantity demanded of a commodity is equal to the percentage change. So percentage change in quantity demanded equals percentage change in price. So change in quantity demanded equals change in price. So in this case, price elasticity is equal to 1. So EP equals 1, and demand in this case is said to be unitary. So these are the 3 main types of elasticity of demand, and we shall explain this in a diagrammatical form, and you will be clear about it. So we are going to explain the inelastic demand or elastic demand in the diagrammatical form. So in both the diagram, there is figure 1 and figure 2, we are measuring quantity on the x axis and measuring price on the y axis. So DD is the given demand curve here, and even here DD is the given demand curve, and OP is the given price level in both cases, and OP dash is the given fall in price. So with the fall in price, what will happen to the quantity demanded? We shall see that result of quantity demanded due to fall in price in these 2 diagrams. So we will see a different story here and different picture here when there is a fall in price. So it is clear from figure 1 and 2 by looking at it that in figure 1 and 2 will represent 2 demand curves, representing the 2 demand curves for a given fall in price. So price has fallen from OP to OP dash, even here OP to OP dash. So price has fallen in both the cases. Same price is fallen in both the cases, and the fall in price is same. So for given fall in price, that is from OP to OP dash, as I said, the increase in quantity demanded is much greater in figure 1. So when there is a price fall from OP to OP dash, the demand for quantity is much higher in figure 1 than in figure 2. So see the gap. M dash is much bigger than N dash. So therefore, demand curve in figure 1. So demand curve in figure 1 is more elastic than demand curve in figure 2 for a given fall in price on the given demand curves. So demand for good represented in figure 1 is generally said to be elastic. So demand curve in figure 1 is generally elastic, and the demand for good in figure 2 is said to be inelastic because the fall in price in both the cases causing the quantity demanded to change is different. And when there is a fall in price in figure 1, the quantity demanded is bigger than quantity demanded in figure 2. So when there is a fall in price and the quantity demanded is greater, then we call it elastic demand. And here the fall in prices leads to very less quantity demanded, and it is even lesser than the fall in price. So this gap is bigger than this gap. So fall in price is greater than increase in quantity demanded. In this case it is called inelastic demand, and in this case the fall in price is lesser than quantity demanded. So here quantity demand is greater than the fall in the price, so that is called elastic demand, and elasticity of price is greater than 1 and price elasticity is less than 1 in this case. So that is the price elasticity, or the two diagram depicts the different types of elasticity, that is elastic demand and inelastic demand in the diagrammatical form. After explaining the different types of price elasticity of demand, we go ahead in explaining the price elasticity of demand for different goods, and we will see that this price elasticity of demand for different goods varies a good deal. It varies from goods. So as said above, goods greatly differ in respect of elasticities. They differ in elasticity, that is their degree to change in price, that is their degree of responsiveness to change in price varies from good to good. So here we are going to talk about different types of goods and their price elasticity of demand. So let us take an example of rice, common salt, wheat. So this type of goods are very unresponsive to price. Whether price falls or whether price rises, their demand, are somehow remaining constant. They did not change much even though price changed, which means that these are the type of good that is needed for daily life, and they come under necessity goods. And necessity goods such as common salt, like rice, wheat, they are very unresponsive to price, which means that their demand for common salt is said to be inelastic. The demand for rice is said to be inelastic. The demand for wheat is said to be inelastic, which means that whether there is a change in price, that is fall in price or not, the demand is constant or is the same. And opposite to that, the demand for goods like TVs, televisions, refrigerators, etc. is elastic, which means that they are very responsive to the percentage change in price. So a little bit of change in price or a little fall in the price will bring about large changes in their quantity demanded. So since they are very responsive to the change in price, a little fall in the price brings about a large change in the quantity demanded for that particular good, such as TVs, refrigerator, etc., which means that the demand is elastic. So here we can say that the main reason for difference in elasticity of demand is the possibility of substitution between goods. So we can say that a good having a close substitute, their elasticity is very high, or they are elastic in demand. They are elastic in demand, and which means that they are very responsive to the change in price. So goods which have substitutes or complementary commodities or close substitutes, they are very elastic. And goods that have no substitutes, such as rice, common salt, they are inelastic in demand. So we are talking about price elasticity of necessity goods versus goods with close substitutes, or luxuries or entertainment goods. So when it comes to necessity goods or without a substitute, their demand is very inelastic. And on the other hand, when we talk about goods with substitutes, their demand is very elastic. They are very responsive to change in price, and little change or little fall in the price can bring about a huge change in the quantity demanded for that particular commodity. So we will now explain the two extreme conditions or cases of price elasticity of demand. First extreme situation is of, perfectly elastic demand. So EP equals 0, which means that it is perfectly inelastic in demand. So as depicted in this figure 3. So in this case, changes in prices of a commodity does not affect the quantity demanded of a commodity at all. So whatever changes in price occurs, the demand remains constant. So changes in price does not affect any demand, any of the quantity demanded in this case. So in this case of perfectly inelastic demand, demand curve is a vertical straight line as shown here. So demand curve is a vertical straight line to OX axis. So as it is seen here, whatever the price of a commodity, the quantity demanded remains constant. So it is remaining constant at OQ quantity. So an approximate example of this perfectly, inelastic demand is the demand of an acute diabetic patient for insulin. So a diabetic patient will buy the insulin at whatever prices, because he has to complete the dose. He has to complete the prescribed dose of insulin per week, whatever its price is. So that is the case of, extreme cases of inelastic demand. So the second situation is perfectly elastic demand. So in this case, demand curve is, as we see here, horizontally to the x-axis. The demand curve is horizontal to the x-axis. So this figure 4 shows that, the horizontal demand curve for a product implies that, a small reduction in price will cause the buyers to increase quantity demanded from 0 to all they want. So a small change in price or small decrease, small fall in price will bring about a huge change in the quantity demanded, of a particular commodity that has fallen in prices. So about this, perfectly elastic demand, we will see in the later chapters, that perfectly elastic demand curve is found for the product of an individual firm, working in a perfectly competitive market. So this is, applicable or possible in a firm producing a product in a completely, perfectly competitive market. So little change in the price will bring about a huge change in the quantity demanded of a commodity, is the, implication of a horizontal demand curve. And that is the case of a perfectly elastic demand. So price elasticity is equal to infinity. And in this case, price elasticity is 0. There is no elasticity at all. So the demand remains the same, even though there is a change in prices. So these are the two, extreme cases of price elasticity of demand, that is perfectly inelastic and perfectly elastic demand.